As the Alberta government was busy locking you down, making your Christmas dinner all but illegal, cruelly limiting the funerals of our loved ones to just 10 people, closing your business, and unemploying thousands in the food service and hospitality industries basically overnight, they were also sending letters, bending rules, and pleading with Ottawa for special interventions to get Hollywood to come to Alberta to film a reality show. We have new exclusive documents which show the timeline of the Alberta government's attempts to get the Bachelorette to film in Alberta 5 days after the imposition of sweeping restrictions that hammered normal Albertans like you and me. Dina Hinshaw, our Chief Medical Officer of Health, sent a letter to Ottawa lobbying for the Hollywood production team to get special exemptions to come to Alberta. Today, I'll show you that letter, as well as the Alberta government's attempts to relabel the production team as essential workers. They also lobbied the border police to get the Hollywood team into Canada. There was also a plan to take registered nurses away from the valuable work they were doing in their communities to instead support the needs of the Bachelorette crew. You know, after telling us they needed to lock Albertans down to prevent a looming collapse of an already strained Alberta healthcare system. First, let's go back a little because the timeline is so important here. At the end of January 2021, it became public that the Bachelorette reality show, where strangers vie for the hand of a single woman through some sort of bizarre reality TV show courtship ritual, well, it became knowledgeable that it would be filming in Alberta. So people from outside of Canada would be coming to the Alberta mountain resort town of Jasper to work and play. But when did the Alberta government start their work and lobbying on behalf of Hollywood millionaires? Well, these documents tell me exactly when. And the details here are very important because on December 8th, 2020, the Alberta government went full Grinch and canceled Christmases in our homes and churches. And they also canceled the livelihoods of so many Albertans right before the holiday season. Remember this?
Christmas is the most important time of the year. It's the symbolic heart of family life and of treasured memories. And Lord knows we all need the loving presence of family and friends at the end of this terrible year now more than ever. But here is the hard truth. Clearly, the biggest single source of viral transmission is at-home gatherings. It's when we let our guard down. It's when we relax with people that we are close to. And it's when transmission most easily happens. And so if we relax the public health measures to permit large family gatherings in just 3 weeks' time, we will, without a shadow of a doubt, see a large increase in hospitalizations and fatalities.
So the new restrictions announced on the 8th hit Albertans on December 13th, 2020. And the government started work on behalf of the Bachelorette production team and ZK Productions on December 16th, at least according to the documents I have, just 3 days later, right after the government told you your job was not essential. Let's get into these 46 documents. We'll publish them here for you to read them for yourself because you made our access to these documents possible through your crowdfunding donations to our special website, rebelinvestigates.com. So thank you again for facilitating this important work. Page 14 confirms the involvement of the Jobs, Economy and Innovation Minister's office. They wanted an update and they were talking about the, quote, strongest interest to have this thing taped in Alberta. And the minister's chief of staff was offering to support efforts by talking to the federal government on behalf of the production. Ironically, this is Ariella Kimmel, who's now involved in a lawsuit with the Kenney government over an allegedly toxic work environment. But Kimmel wanted to get the Bachelorette shot in Alberta during a pandemic. Page 16, we can see that the Alberta Health Ministry is, quote, being as supportive as possible with this foreign business while ruining yours. Page 18 also confirms in an email to Dina Hinshaw, the Chief Medical Officer of Health I mentioned earlier, that the Bachelorette people would be allowed outings like the NHL. Also, they note that Jasper doesn't have the public health staff. They're already short-staffed to deal with this, and the government is looking at, quote, creative solutions. We are currently having some challenges with the public health inspector staffing in the area and are working to recruit staff. Expectations for other AHS public health supports would be appreciated as soon as reasonably possible, as Jasper is a relatively small population and may need some creative solutioning for staffing, including public health nursing, depending on the demand. So these people closed your business to protect the healthcare system, or so they say, but they were also recruiting nurses away from the healthcare system to support this well-kept Hollywood production team. On page 20, Dina Hinshaw sends a letter of support for the Bachelorette to the federal government. This was on December 18th, 2020, just 5 days after she announced more restrictions on normal, everyday Albertans and their businesses. And her reasoning in this letter is absolutely insane and so out of touch. Hinshaw thinks people would feel better about the lockdown if we see Alberta on TV. You know, she's locked us all in our homes, canceled our Christmases, and bankrupted us, but Jasper's on TV. Look at this. In addition, shows like Bachelorette offer not only Albertans, but viewers across Canada and around the world a safe outlet for entertainment, allowing them to take their minds off the pandemic for a short time. These mental breaks for what is an anxious and difficult time for many Canadians are important for maintaining positive mental health and overall well-being during a long, challenging pandemic. So watch the mind-numbing frivolity and hedonism of The Bachelorette to escape the fact that the government has just ruined your life. Thanks, Chief Medical Officer of Health, for that very important health advice. Less Jim and friends, more morally corrupt TV. Seems legit. Page 29, the government Alberta is seen to be interceding with the CBSA, that's the border agency, on behalf of the Bachelorette production crew who were held up at the border. You can see that while normal Albertans were getting hassled and fined at the border, snatched into COVID jails, and billed for their 2-star hotel incarceration, these non-Albertan Hollywood employees, they were getting offered concierge treatment through the COVID system by our provincial authorities. Look at this. Despite us repeatedly telling the production crew that if there is an issue, they are to call me and I'll connect with the CBSA, they did not call me about these 2 travelers. There are 9 travelers coming in tonight. CBSA has their names and flight info, and we have made it clear again that they should call me if there's an issue over entrance to the Border Pilot. Now, that's the Border Pilot testing program that launched here in Alberta. And this email comes from Aaron O'Neill from the Alberta Health Emergency Operations Center. You see a pandemic so emergent and so deadly that you need to take people off emergency operations to escort Hollywood types through the system. Page 31, Northern Health Zone is raising concerns about being able to accommodate this production due to lack of staffing. Look at this. I believe during the NHL playoffs, Alberta Health Services asked us for volunteer nurses to do swabbing and the NHL reimbursed us. Just wondering if there are similar plans in the works for Jasper. I'm hoping not due to the small registered nurse base that we have in that community, but I thought I should check. Now, the person who sent that email, the Director of Clinical Operations for Alberta Health Services Area 4, also notes that on social media, people are big mad about all of this. On page 35, the Alberta government is looking at ways to exempt the American production crew from quarantine. They were looking for loopholes. If we scroll back to page 33, we can see they're trying to put the reality TV show under communications exemptions from quarantine, like news and journalism. On page 41 and 42, it looks like the government was pushing for Hinshaw to send a second letter to support the Bachelorette as part of a national interest exemption to quarantine upon entry. But in a rare, bizarre moment of restraint from the woman who locked up churches and pastors and closed your businesses at a moment's notice, her staff was reluctant to send that second lobbying letter. It says we can send another letter, but it would be essentially the same, and I have reservations about sending a letter unless something has changed. I think we should be careful to ensure we stick to public health and not appear to be advocating or lobbying, to which Hinshaw replied, agree, we should stay with the public health perspective, not our or my role to advocate for industry. Page 43, the government of Alberta supports deeming the Bachelorette people essential workers to exempt them from public health rules. Look at this. Bachelorette production crew requests for an exemption as essential workers coming your way today or Monday. Jobs, Economy and Innovation or Culture will be sending a letter advising that the Bachelorette production crew fits under this exemption, and they're requesting a letter from you to provide to them for border crossing. Portable TV was essential, but not your entrepreneurial dreams, not your church, your kids' sports, nope. Not my mother's funeral either, not your Christmas gathering with your friends and family. That was all banned by the government. All while the same Alberta government was doing everything they could do to get that American Bachelorette crew into Alberta to work. And I think at the end of the day, the only holdup was the feds. After all this lobbying, advocating, searching for loopholes, and shameless hypocrisy, the Bachelorette never did end up filming in Alberta, opting instead for New Mexico because the science apparently is different in New Mexico. Just the same way the science is different for an American reality TV show about casual dating, meaningless sex, and superficial relationships than it is for the things Albertans have deep, meaningful connections to: our churches, our communities, our families, and our businesses. For Rebel News, I'm Sheila Gunn Reid. These documents were made possible through your generous crowdfunding donations to a special investigations website, rebelinvestigates.com. That's why we publish them here in full for you to read for yourself. They're as much my documents as they are yours. If you'd like to continue to contribute to make this important work possible, shedding light in the dark corners of government, please consider making a donation to the website I just mentioned, rebelinvestigates.com.